Nano Machine by Ang Hongweolja. Chapter 386 Destruction. Part 1. When Yun Byeso, the next warrior of the forces of justice and the eldest son of the Yulin clan's leader, got suppressed with overwhelming power, the warriors of the Ping family surrendered without any resistance. Of course, it was because they knew that Pingyu wouldn't want any unnecessary sacrifices. Even if they try, our side will only end up with a lot of injured or dead people. He was blinded by his own ambition and set his goal way too high. It wasn't even remotely realistic to reach that goal, but the moment he faced reality, he already lost something important. How could such a monster even be among us? Never would have anyone thought that a supreme master-level warrior would be defeated that fast. It was as if the difference between them was like a skilled warrior and a low-ranked warrior. If it weren't for the skills Yun Byeso displayed, that was what it would have looked like. Does the difference between people grow with each step into the next level? Scary. Just one level higher, but said level was indescribably high. The difference in power was way too vast. It had to take a few years or decades for one to go from superior to supreme master level. How could he grow this much in a couple of months? Elder Changsu had desperately tried to stop them, but not a single leader, not even the great leader, had listened to his words, and now they were all learning the truth the hard way. He suddenly remembered the bet he placed with Elder Changsu before leaving for the palace. They promised one arm to the other, and if Pingyu got released, then he was in danger of losing his other arm too. His desire to negotiate with the emperor and give success to the forces of justice watered down. Meanwhile, the front yard of the temple was nearly filled with hundreds of prisoners. Around 40 people of the Ping family and 50 or so women from the Surim temple and also teachers in the temple, all on the ground looking down in fear. That was when Hubong, who was on the top step of the main hall, spoke. "Lord, we didn't kill any of them, but we did hurt the two leaders and the son of the great leader. This might not be in our favor, right?" The warning given by Yun Byeso ran through Hubong's head. From the point of view of Yulin, as if it wasn't enough to change the state religion, the demonic cult even cut the arms of their leaders. Ko Wonger, who was next to him, answered, "Ha ha ha, don't worry, Hubong. Nothing of that sort will happen at the moment." Moment? This is an alliance that was formed to deal with the Blade God 6 martial clan, but if the alliance gets broken up, it will go back to a four-way war and not a three-way war. How could the alliance break that easily? It was just Yun Byeso's tactic to get out of here safely without any more sacrifices. Chun Yoan nodded his head in agreement with Ko Wonger's words. The reason for the alliance wasn't peace. Phew, I guess I was worried over nothing. With your personality, it would be weird if you weren't concerned about it. However, with the forces of evil in the west, Blade God 6 martial clan in the east and us in the south, they wouldn't dare to do such a thing. As they knew, if the alliance broke down, the Yulin would end up getting surrounded by the enemies from the east, west and south, so they were bound to end up dead. The Yulin would do anything to avoid that. I wonder how they would react if they knew what happened here. He. So far, the forces of justice didn't know what was happening. They simply hoped that their leaders would persuade the emperor successfully. "Lord, what are we going to do with them?" Ko Wonger asked, pointing to the prisoners who had been tied up with ropes. There was no way that they could keep these people here forever. "We should send them back, excluding Yun Byeso and the other leaders." If it wasn't for the alliance, Chun Yoan would have killed them since their actions were sufficient enough to do so. However, it wasn't desirable to make an enemy out of Yulin at the moment. "Then I will take them over to their base and deliver the message of the Lord." Ko Wonger was confident. Taking over the prisoners to the main base of Yulin would definitely incur their wrath upon him, yet Ko Wonger boldly took up the task. "No, you don't have to." Chun Yoan shook his head. Looking at the prisoners who were tied down, he spoke. "Put a letter in their hands and send them off, that should be more than enough." With Yun Byeso and the two leaders in the cult's hands, no one would dare act recklessly, but Chun Yoan didn't want to take a chance. If the Yulin were too furious, they would end up holding Ko Wonger as a hostage and request an exchange. TCH understood. Disappointed that he wasn't given the task, Ko Wonger clicked his tongue. Compared to the other 6 swords, this was supposed to be his first huge appearance, so he wanted to be of more use. Unlike him, Hubong laughed and said, With this incident, the entire Wulin will know about the power of our Lord. Hooray! Maybe the Lord will be given some kind of title or name. Until then, Chun Yoan wasn't known to anyone other than the demonic cult. However, with this, the fact that he overpowered 3 leaders of the forces of justice will be known. Maybe there was a chance for a special title. For any warriors in the Wulin, a title meant a rise in their reputation. I'm looking forward to it, hee. 3 days later, the prisoners of war who were captured by the demonic cult returned back. Not only the head of the Ping family, Pinggyo, but also the swordswoman of Surin Mountain and Yun Byeso, the son of the great leader, had gone to the palace for a chance to redeem themselves. The great leader and 3 other leaders had received the reports from Ohai of Hangsen clan and Ping Yosik, lieutenant of the Ping family. How could this happen? Amidba, ambassador of the Surim temple, second leader Gakyan, was memorizing sutras with a serious expression. It was because this was something that no one had predicted. Who would have imagined that 3 leaders would end up getting turned into hostages? Is that really true? 6th leader, Elder Peng Chungwon of the Forces of Justice, asked O Sian, a member of the Hangsen clan, in complete disbelief. They did understand that the power of Chun Yoan had increased, but they didn't expect it to reach such a level. It is the truth. Even Leader Yun was no match for him. O Sian remembered the confrontation which took place at that time. The expressions on the faces of the leaders went sour as they kept on listening. The more they heard about the confrontation, the closer it seemed like a one-sided attack. Did he just steal the Earth swords and use them for his own attack? No, that can't be possible, right? This skill, which is known to be something that only the Supreme Masters could use, was the Earth sword. It was a level that only the 5 strongest warriors, who were currently known as the highly skilled ones of the Yulin, could do, but to disable the Earth swords meant that the opponent was of a much higher level than them. Were Elder Chongsu's words really true? A story which no one was ready to believe at that time. Anyone who learnt martial arts would be aware of it. There were a lot of people who couldn't climb to the Supreme Master level even if they practiced their whole life. Moreover, those who reached the Supreme Master level were only very few remarkable and known individuals. They could be counted on one's fingers. And not a single person in Yulin who reached the Supreme Master level had climbed into the Divine Master level. Does that mean that he is almost like a god now? All one could think of was that this person was chosen by the heavens. Peng Chungwon, who had been in shock for a while, asked the Ping family's warriors, "By the way, what is it that you are wearing on your back?" "Ah." At that question, the man's expression darkened. It was more difficult than talking about what had happened in the Imperial Palace. "There's something inside? Open it." At that time, a middle-aged man, who hadn't changed his expression like the other leaders, opened his mouth for the first time in the meeting. "Ah, 3rd leader." A man with thick eyebrows and dressed in luxurious blue silk. He was Namgung Kyong, the head of the Namgung family, a famous swordsman. So he was here too. It was only natural for the warriors of Ping to be scared. Namgung Kyong, the eastern commander, was in charge of the battlefield in case the Blade God 6 martial clan crossed their borders. He is the 3rd leader. No one thought that he would come over from his position and attend the meeting. Do as the 3rd leader said. Peng Chungwon also nodded his head in agreement. After hesitating for a while, the warriors spoke. "Actually, the Lord of Demonic Cult has asked me to deliver this wooden box to the leaders." "The Lord of Demonic Cult?" "Igrievades." The words Lord of Demonic Cult garnered everyone's attention. He untied the wooden box he was holding on his back and put it down in front of the great leader, Emok's seat. And when the lid of the wooden box was opened, the faces of the men who watched its content hardened. Shockingly, there were 3 severed arms inside the wooden box. What is this? The leaders, who just heard what happened in the Imperial Palace, couldn't possibly not know whose arms they belonged to. It was clear that the arm in a grey monk's robe belonged to Monk Sathi, and the muscularly developed arm belonged to Pinggyo. The last one, with the white sleeve, belonged to Yun Byeso. Bang! Everyone's eyes turned when a huge sound roared from one seat. With eyes clearly in anger, those furious eyes belonged to the great leader of the Forces of Justice, who had never lost his cool so far. He is angry. It was only natural for him to be angry. He just saw his son's severed arm. Weang! Ah! The severed arm in the white robe inside the wooden box floated in the air and got pulled in by Imok. His eyes trembled in anger as he looked at his son's severed arm. Lord of the demonic cult. His heart, which was like a calm lake, was raging. Never once did the former leader, Chen Yojung, ever make him this angry. Is this because the Lord of Demonic Cult thinks that I can't break the alliance? How dare he test me? Sending only a severed arm was like provoking and ridiculing the entire Yulin. But then, something caught his angry eyes. This is... The severed arm was clenched in a fist and something was inside it. He tried to open it, but the hand was clenched too tightly for him to open. When Imok began to inject energy into the wrist of the severed arm, the stiff fingers finally stretched out, revealing it. Folded very tightly, something was written on a paper. No way, this can't be? It was strange. Why did he have to make the paper invisible even after placing it in the fist? Judging that it was something important, he carefully looked at it while making sure that the others didn't know about this message. As he read the contents in her, Imok's expression changed. Unaware of this, the leaders were having a serious conversation among themselves. Sixth leader Peng Chungwon shook his head, not understanding anything, and spoke to second leader Gukyong. What do you think this means, monk? This looks like a warning. The former lord of the demonic cult was known to be a dangerous person, but this lord is... There was no need to continue. This act was a warning and provocation. It was as if they were being told that anyone who would get involved in the matter of the state religion's change will not be tolerated. I never thought that this is how things would turn out. Amitba? They didn't know how the lord of demonic cult would react, yet there was no room to protest as they themselves had sent Yen Byuso and the others to the palace. Moreover, it was the Yulin who would lose a lot if the alliance was to be broken. It doesn't seem like this is the only issue. No one spoke, but the Lord of Demonic Cult and his people looked much more dangerous than the Blade God 6 martial clan. This puts us in a bind. Not being able to hide his frustration, Peng Chungwon shook his head. Tak! At that moment, Imok put down the severed arm of Yen Byuso and after reading the contents of the paper, he spoke to the leaders. I am putting forth a proposal. Proposal? To the bewildered leaders, the great leader spoke in a low yet confident voice. A proposal to break the alliance with the demonic cult. Chapter 387. Destruction. Annulment. Part 2. The abrupt proposal about the cancellation of the alliance by the great leader of the forces of justice and Yulin. It was enough of a shock so that every leader in the hall was confused. It was natural for the great leader to be furious as Yen Byuso was none other than his eldest son, but his decision seemed too extreme. Amitba, great leader. That request seems premature. Second leader Gukyen didn't directly oppose Imok's decision, but he thought that the timing wasn't right. If they did cut ties with the demonic cult, they would be ending up surrounded by enemies. Heavenly God, great leader. Although I share the same opinion and understand you in regards to the Lord of the demonic cult provoking us too much, it still is an unreasonable proposal to break the alliance. The sixth leader, Pun Chungwon, objected the great leader's proposal too. Things would have been different if the Lord of the demonic cult was a kid lacking in politics like they originally judged him to be, but with the change in the state religion, he proved that he was a monster with power. In a situation like this, it was risky to turn someone stronger than the Blade God 6 martial clan into their enemy. Please, I request that you withdraw the proposal. Even in the Yulin, the opinions of the two leaders who just spoke would never get ignored because of their reputation. Moreover, being the brain of the forces of justice, they had no choice but to discourage and decline the excessive action which would only bring war into their lands. Does everyone think like that? All eyes naturally turned towards the third leader Nam Gungkyong at the question of Imok. It was always necessary for any proposal to have two sides. But Nam Gungkyong is a person who has an extreme tendency to go against alliances. It was a concern for the people. Even when the truth about the Blade God 6 martial clan was revealed, he was the person who took the lead in opposing the alliance along with Pinggyo and Dang Pil Ho, the head of the Dang family. Besides, he was one of the leaders who taught Yen Byuso. Surprisingly, the third leader Nam Gung-kyung looked very worried. Is that the correct decision? It was natural that he was worried. Even within the Yulin, only a few people knew his true identity. He was one of the 5 families in Jianghu who were believed to be extremists hoping for a clean world. From the viewpoint of those who were trying to create a world of justice, the break in the alliance would be welcomed with open arms. Even if Yun Byeoso's arm was cut off, this is an extreme reaction considering the character of the great leader. Even though Imok's clan wasn't that famous or the most flourishing one, he was able to become a member of the forces of justice with his skills. However, the means to how he was able to become the great leader of the Yulin weren't because they were passed down from the elder generation, but because he himself was full of energy and smart enough to achieve the title. And such a great leader was coming up with a rash decision. Nam Gung-kyung's mind was turning into a mess. In a way, this was an opportunity he shouldn't miss. At this year's festival, everyone from the demonic cult and the Blade God 6 martial clan will be gathered. It has always been said that the mass killing was barely successful by the books left by the elders, but if the Empire supports us, we might be able to eliminate the leaders of both factions at once. 10 days left until the Nano festival begins. At that time, the leaders of the 3 major powers and the new clan, the Blade God 6 martial clan, will gather to renew the non-aggression treaty between the Wulin and Imperial family. Opportunities for the heads to gather were very rare. Just the lord or the main leader of the faction had to be removed. That would be a great opportunity for the Yulin to show their true power. Nam Gung-kyung raised his head and looked at the great leader. His eyes seemed focused on going through with the decision of Imok. I guess he is serious. If a person like Pingyo had placed such a proposal, then Nam Gung-kyung would have avoided getting involved in it, thinking of it as a proposal for personal gain, but for the great leader himself to put it. Nam Gung-kyung couldn't stop feeling suspicious, so he finally decided to ask Imok himself. Could you let me know why you had to make such a decision? At that question, great leader Imok opened his mouth without any hesitation. In the beginning, I promoted this alliance in the hopes of outwitting evil with the help of the demonic cult. But I was wrong. Wrong. I have come to realize that if we compromise with one evil in order to get rid of another, it will go against the noble ideas of the forces of justice, which have been established since ancient times. Even now, I should correct what I did wrong so we don't create even more problems in the coming days. Nam Gung-kyung's eyes lit up at the words of Imok. At first he was skeptical of the abrupt break in alliance, but it didn't seem like he had to worry. This was surely an opportunity he wasn't supposed to miss. This is the chance the leaders should take. I need to put an end to this discussion before the great leader comes to change his thoughts. Pondering for a while, Nam Gung-kyung opened his mouth. I heard the resolve of the great leader. That nobility of thinking for justice moved my heart. As someone who once opposed the alliance, I am in favor of the great leader's proposal. How? A sigh escaped from the second leader's mouth. This was an expected reaction from Nam Gung-kyung. Elder Pung. This could be a really long day. Amit Ba? We need to stop them from going ahead. Sixth leader, who judged that the situation wasn't turning out well, spoke. Great leader. All the decisions need to be made after a fair meeting, so it won't be possible to proceed unless more than half of the leaders are present. If you are going to make such a proposal, shouldn't you be summoning all of the leaders? Pung Chungwon only wanted to buy time. In anger, Imok wasn't facing reality. With Imok's personality, if the sixth leader could buy even one day's time, there was a chance that he would withdraw the proposal the next day. But there is no need for that. All the leaders are busy with their duties. Since this was a proposal made by the great leader, how about we just go ahead placing our belief in him? No. Leader Nam Gung. In Nam Gung-kyung's opinion, both Gakyun and Pun Chungwon looked at him with shocked expressions. The greatest authority in the forces of justice was in the great leader's hands. As Pung Chunwon said, since the forces of justice were made up of numerous clan leaders, all leaders had to meet to decide any matter, but there are possibilities for exceptions. The decision made by the great leader, the great leader's order. The great leader could use his authority and process his proposal 3 times. That was the maximum number of times he could use his authority, and everyone had to follow him without any disagreement. Leader Nam Gung. How can you talk about invoking the great leader's order on such an important matter? Even Peng Chengwan, who would never lose his cool, raised his voice. It was because everyone would lose their right to vote on the matter if the order got triggered. However, since the order was such a tricky thing, the past great leaders have been extremely careful when using it. The current great leader, Imok, had never used it before. Great leader, choose this carefully. This is good. Following the third leader's opinion, we'll go ahead with the use of the great leader's order in this matter. Huh. Great leader. How can you make such a Amitba? The two leaders couldn't hide their displeasure at the words of Imok, who seemed dead set on going through. On the other hand, Nam Gungkyong couldn't stop smiling. This is not a lie. This is definite. All the concerns he had disappeared. Finally, an opportunity rose for him to work as a member of the extremist group. He will be very pleased with this. Late at night, in the office of the Forces of Justice, a single candle in a white porcelain lamp was illuminating the dark room. The man in the room opened up a crumpled paper, which seemed more like a booklet, and read it. The Lord of the Demonic Cult. Call me Chun Yo-won. First of all, I would like to apologize to you for hurting your son and the other leaders inside the Imperial Palace. However, I thought that if I didn't do it, the leader of the Forces of Justice wouldn't believe me, so I couldn't help but make all the lords feel a little uncomfortable. The great leader's oath will have to be made. If that is done, I will safely release your son and the two others. And I will also ask the emperor to consider Taoism in regards to diplomatic relations. In return, I expect the great leader to do one thing for me. Due to the incident in the Imperial Palace, the succession plan may have failed and the leaders of the Blade God 6 martial clan might not appear at the festival. Just like our academy, I heard that your faction is struggling with the problem of spies too. This is why I came up with a good plan. And for that, the Great Lord should. It was written in a crumbled booklet. In order to deceive the enemies who placed spies, it was written that one should deceive the allies too, along with a message to cancel the alliance for a while. Imok was angry, but he wasn't interested in taking such extreme steps. However, while reflecting on the contents in the booklet-like letter, he thought that the Lord of the Demonic Cult was rather reasonable. This is no different than a gamble. Weeing. Imok, who read the contents once again, burned it in the candle. The booklet crumbled and disappeared into ashes. His eyes gleamed strangely as he looked at it. A deep valley of the Yangjabang Peak, a mountain not far from the southwest of the main building of Forces of Justice. A cave, deep in the dark valley, was covered with bushes. It looked like a cave where wild beasts lived. It was quiet inside. In front of the entrance of such a cave, an unidentified black long-haired man appeared with a bamboo hat. The bamboo hat-wearing man knelt down on the entrance of the cave, which was empty, and opened his mouth. I have a message for your orders. As soon as those words fell, a figure moved within the cave. This figure, which gave out no energy whatsoever, was wearing a black mask which completely covered the eyes. One wouldn't be able to see what's ahead, but the person didn't seem comfortable. How did it go? A part of the lips, which were covered by the mask, moved. To the question of the masked person, the man answered in a confident voice. Successful. Was the break of the alliance declared? It was. At those words, the man took off the bamboo hat which was covering his face. Shockingly, the man was none other than Peng Yosuk of the Peng family. As expected, everything went perfectly fine. No one spoke about anything, no one in the Peng family was suspicious either. Peng Yosuk pulled up the skin that stretched like rubber. At that moment, the masked man spoke. Stop it. It was made from a dead body. If you pull it like that, it'll tear. Ugh. So sorry. Flustered, he let go of the cheekskin he was pulling at. The masked man asked Peng Yosuk, "Did the extremists move?" Just as the leader expected, he took care of it. If we make good use of this opportunity, I think we will be able to find out the identity of the person called Ho Ju in the near future. The masked man nodded his head in satisfaction. Good. 3 leaders. Until the day that the festival begins, see if they are moving according to the plans of the Forces of Justice. Yes. Sure. As soon as the masked man's order fell, Peng Yosuk wore his bamboo hat and went back in the speed of light. The masked man mumbled, looking in the direction he went. Lord of the demonic cult, Chun Yo-won. I have been hiding my appearance all this time because you interfered in my matters. This time you will pay the price.